What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So for this horror news update, Steven Soderbergh has terrifying ideas for Contagion follow-up, but doesn't want to be, quote, irresponsible. So I agree. As many of you may recall, I think Contagion came out, I think it probably says here in the article, yeah, 2011. I know it had been a while since this film had been out. And obviously when this film came out, and I'm sure many of you had seen it, and I'm sure what drew me to this film originally was the casting. I thought I had a great casting, and at the time didn't know much about the film, obviously, until I saw it. And a lot's changed since 2011. If we just look at this first part of this article here, director Steven Soderbergh and writer Scott Burns have been discussing So if we look just at this first part, if we look at the first part of this article here, director Steve Soderbergh and writer Scott Z. Burns have been discussing a philosophical sequel to their 2011 pandemic thriller Contagion after the events of 2020 gave the film new resonance. Again, I think with a film like this, again, lots changed since 2011. Obviously the events of 2020 and even for the years that follows, for at least the first, few years from 2020, probably really through 2022, probably through a good part of all of 2022. So for those, 3 years, all of 2020, 2021, 2022. So for 3 years, obviously the world had changed, and we all felt that impact of that change. And I think, obviously, when this film came out, no one really thought of a global pandemic really happening, ever taking place. And if it ever did take place, I'm sure many of us also thought, oh, it'll never happen in my lifetime. And then was it 9 years later from the time of that film being released? It happened. And again, we were all drastically impacted by this. And now trying to come out with a film like that, you do have to be very careful, just because I think a film like that nowadays, you almost borderline on the fact of many people turning it from it just being a movie about a global pandemic or a pandemic happening within this isolated area versus turning it to political, turning it into fake news, real news, things of that nature. So I think it's a very tight rope to walk, a very fine line to walk that I'm not sure many directors, writers, even studios really want to find themselves in. It's 2025. We're roughly 5 full years removed, because really in 2020, when the pandemic really started, I guess, I don't want to say taking shape, that's not the wording I want to use, but really started to grow, maybe that's the right word, was around end of February, March of 2020. And then it seemed like all of a sudden it just hit like 100%. And so we're roughly, again, 5 full years removed from when it started. So I think even then this could be a very tight, a very sensitive thing to address or try to tackle from a film perspective. Not to say we should never have another film about a global pandemic or a pandemic that happens within a town or a city. I'm not saying that at all. I just don't know if you're going to be able to do something so close, right? So continuing on, speaking on the One Decision podcast, Soderbergh said that they've come up with some terrifying ideas for the follow-up after speaking with pandemic experts. There would have to be, I think, a plot that doesn't feel predictable. He continues, I don't want to torture people. There are scenarios that you could come up with that would categorize as irresponsible. That I would go, that's a big idea, but I'm not sure I want to put that idea out there. Frankly, I do think about that. Contagion, and then we go on to talk about the casting of the original film. When Beth Emhoff returns to Minneapolis from business in Hong Kong. So this is just the synopsis. If you didn't know what the synopsis was for the first film, I don't think we necessarily need to read that. Again, I'm sure many of you have already seen it. It just goes on to talk about what the film was about. But I am glad the fact that even if they are willing to do a follow-up, a sequel to this film, he's recognizing right up front that he doesn't want to be irresponsible with this content. He doesn't want to scare people, frighten people, entice any fear into people with a film, with a movie, as it probably could. because again, so many millions of people were affected. I mean, not just millions, it was a global thing. So billions of people were affected by this. And obviously millions of people lost their lives to this. So I'm not sure if this is probably the right time to say, hey, let's do Contagion Part 2. I'm not to say again that this subgenre of pandemic should never be touched again. I absolutely think it should. I just don't know if now is the right time to do it. So just my opinion. Let me know down in the comment sections what you think. Do you feel that now is the right time for a Contagion Part 2? Do you feel now is the right time for us to go back to the pandemic subgenre of horror and say, you know, we are far enough removed from the events of 2020 that, hey, we can start putting out movies around this topic again, and it shouldn't be a problem. Again, let me know down in the comment sections what you think, and if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, we'll see you at the next one. Peace.